Alrighty, guys. I have no idea what happened to the last stream, but it kind of, I guess it dropped the call. So I literally went on for, uh, crap, quite a while without even knowing it wasn't working. So, man, I guess I'll talk about something else. I'll go over. No, screw it. We're gonna try it again. Let's see if I can. Um, get turn myself off. See if I can get myself working properly. I can. Maybe I'll get lucky. Who knows? One more time. If anybody listens to this afterwards, or you're roasting along, doing it, you were doing this the whole time, then we'll figure it out. Let's see how we're going. All right. to still says I'm broadcasting. Good. Everything's good to go so far. Uh, I am lucky. This will do what it's supposed to do. A second. Because outline timestamps get you to actually start any kind of commentary. So yeah, right now, basically. What I'm going to do is I'm going to watch a breakdown video, technically again, of ask yourselves breakdown of his name the trade argument. Yeah, maybe I can articulate myself a little bit better this time. We will find out. Okay. I don't know how it is that some of these guys who do live chats, I mean, they've been doing enough to where it's streamlined. This is my second. We do good, do bad. We'll find out. Do, I do. All right. So far, so good. All right. Up. All right. I'm going to go ahead and see if it'll. Okay, good. It's a little loud. Slightly. I'm not sure it's loud for you guys too. What? Oh, we're watching. All right. Pick that up. Let's see if we are still There you go. Screen share. Bam. And yes. Deal. Awesome. Hopefully, this works, and I'm good to go. Yep, so far, awesome. Last time I did this, I was it ended up. I didn't know there was actual delay. It's interesting. Huh. Hey, look, it's me in the future watching me in the past. Kind of cute. All right. Now let me see that so far it's still working. I apparently am still broadcasting. Good deal. Okay. Back now to the video from the beginning. Okay. Now I said this before. The original kind of start of this. Animals don't have full moral status. Humans do. This is what we have, the human race. This is a constant. This is why we don't murder babies, like babies. We don't murder um, anyone who is uh, cognitive. If yeah, if they're retards, lack of a better term. If they're mentally impaired, if they're intellectually impaired, we don't murder them. Why? Because they've been granted, uh, not so much granted, but we more or less determined that there was no reason for them not to have full moral status. There was no, name a trait uh, that would be different, and you can take away all the traits except for the one trait you can't take away, and that's the fact that they're all human. They all belong to the human race. And if you all belong to the human race, then guess what? Here you go. Here's your full moral status. Have a happy life. We're not going to kill you just because. Okay, so technically, full moral status, that would be a trait. Now, if we sit there and uh, now, if we sit there and say that, okay, fine, let's say sentience uh, grants full moral status. Now, does that? Here's the thing: it doesn't. It can't, because if you base like moral value, if you base moral value on uh, sentience, then any human that has less sentience and or no sentience will, you know, conversely have less moral value or no moral value, right? So if you remove sentience, now it would be a trait. You can sit there and say, is there a trait? If you have an answer, sentience, then technically you've named a trait. That destroys the argument. Because the claim, and that's what it is, this argument in and of itself has premises. The premises are no different than claiming. Claim one, claim two, claim three, to the conclusion. And in this case, it's a claim. The claim is that no, well, we'll get to that. Um, but as far as any morally relevant difference, technically full moral status that applies. Humans got it, animals don't. But hey, let's let's see where this goes, shall we? Oh, I'm sorry. Now, if it were a basic logical consistency test, then any trait that you could stand by, if it's logically consistent, meaning that if you could apply it both to humans and animals, and vice versa, then you would be logically consistent. Now, here's the thing: if it's just a logical consistency test, then the emotional ramifications, the reactions should be nil. Just a test, bro. Just a test, right? So it's for him, it's not, because if you sit there and say that if you give a trait, doesn't matter what it is. Say if you say, uh, I don't know, humans don't have bat wings. Okay, or sorry, if the animal has, the animal doesn't not have. If they don't have bat wings, then I don't know. You can name any silly old thing, and as long as you stick to your guns and say, okay, well, yeah, if humans bang, they don't have that, then they don't have moral value. Well, you would be logically consistent, but according, let's okay, let's once again keep going. Con- contradictions against what? If I hold humans uh, morally relevant, but I don't hold animals to that same, if I don't find them morally relevant, then what would be, how is that, how does that correlate? How is if you're respectful and cooperative and nonviolent to your fellow humans? How do you get from that to veganism? How do you link the two? Now, technically, since I've already watched and gone through most of this video, I can tell you right now, he never says any of this. He presents it. He doesn't actually break down what each premise means. Because if he did, and I'm gonna tell you right now, whenever he does do videos and debates, he doesn't necessarily use. He kind of he kind of trims the fat on this, and typically nobody ever gets to this part. Only this part never quite gets this far, uh, because everybody bucks at the second claim, the second premise. This is where they're naming the trait or naming a trait. Um, so he won't go through. All right. Argument for animal moral value. Premise one: humans are of value. What does that even mean? What he claims it translates to, what it means is that humans have basic rights. Moral value equals basic rights, which doesn't make any sense at all because you get basic rights from moral value. That you can't get. It's not. They're not synonymous. But he wants to put there and say that there are. Now, if you believe in basic human rights, what does what what does your belief in basic human rights have anything to do with the rights of animals? Where's the logical leap? But I digress. So humans are moral value. Now, here's the deal. You're supposed to agree with this. The first premise, you're supposed to sit there and say, yes, I believe in, humans are moral value. What's not said is, well, one, does that apply to all? Do all humans have moral value? It doesn't say no. So you have to infer that yes, all humans are moral value. This exists. This would be a truism because and that's the whole thing. Moral value. When he says moral value, all right, is it full moral value? Is it all of the value? Is there degrees of moral value? It doesn't say that. So we can assume that all humans are moral value, and they have all the value, not partial, not grades, not none. But do they have none? Okay, let's find out. Now, here's the thing. What's the mechanism that makes that a truism? Why are humans moral value? Now, here's the thing. He says, you're coming into it, you already have this in your head. If I say, me, Bearded Devil says, I believe all humans are moral. I believe all humans are moral value. How I got there is irrelevant. Okay, because there's no previous that this is a conclusion. Because after all, here's an argument for animal moral value, which means that at one point in time there was an argument for uh, human of human moral value. Okay, so somehow we've already had that argument, and we've determined that yes, humans are moral value. So that's it. You say yes, then we can continue on. Then apparently we can continue on with the argument. What if you say no? What if I say no? Not all humans are moral value. Well, by saying no on anything, you've technically made that statement false. It is now no longer relevant because then it becomes not all humans are moral value. That's not, you don't have to sit there and say they're valueless, but you can say some humans are not of moral value. You could, and I know vegans do. It's kind of funny. I've had arguments with them. I know full well uh, what is the determination, what their determination is, what, what bootstrapping they did to come to this conclusion. What argument they've got. You know, up here, what was their argument that right here, and they determined that for vegans, sentience. For vegans, uh, humans are more value because sentient, and any human that is not sentient does not have more value. Now, you ask yourself, ask yourself. That's funny. You ask yourself why. what would be the justification to come to that conclusion? Now, the reason why this matters is because in every debate, every argument, every response video that Ask Yourself does hinges on how you got to the conclusion of moral value. The reason why this matters is because, of course, it's two. You you've determined through some kind of argumentation that a set of traits, or a trait or a set of traits, determines that humans are of moral value. And if you sit there and say, now here's the thing: if they are not of moral value, technically that would mean that no, uh, humans aren't moral value, but some are, some aren't, and your determination is your own. If I say that all left-handed people um, are have no value, have no moral value, and I've determined this because I say that because they're left-handed, does that mean that every left-handed person doesn't have any moral value? If I stuck to my guns and said no, they don't have any moral value, and therefore I can kill them, and there's no problem with this, I would just seem like just a completely psychotic bastard. Now, conversely, if I sit there and say that uh, every human has moral value so long as they're sentient, the moment they're no longer sentient, they no longer have moral value, and therefore uh, no longer they're no longer you don't moral consideration to them is nil. You can murder uh, a non-sentient person, and it would not be considered wrong, and you would not believe it's wrong because they no longer have moral value because they're no longer sentient. Now, obviously, what's missing is the should. Should uh, humans who are non-sentient, should they they be denied moral value? We've answered that question already as a species, as a people. You know, we've vehemently said no, no, you can't murder. You shouldn't murder any human being who is non-sentient, or you shouldn't, not just can't, you shouldn't murder a human being that is less sentient than you. You know, so no murdering babies, and no murdering uh, the mentally impaired. Okay, we've already determined that that's a bad thing. Don't do it. Why did we? How did we get there? Well, we didn't used to think that way. You know, with babies, there's there's a visceral reason. It's embedded in kind of the instinctual empathy as far as that's concerned. And when it comes to mentally impaired, most of the time we view them little different than children. So we've determined that when we view them as children, well, if we're not going to kill children, we shouldn't, sure as hell shouldn't kill or exploit um, the mentally handicapped, no matter from from autistics to freaking full blown just shells uh, where the lights are out, nobody's home. You know. Now here's the thing that I'll get back to it in a second. The So either way, so we've determined that sentience or lack thereof is not enough for for us humans, to deny uh, to deny other human beings of their moral status. So we've agreed, uh, more or less, as a whole, uh, that all humans have full moral status, I and therefore have moral value across the board. It's wrong to kill another human being, regardless of their cognitive abilities. And that's just as much the same thing. You can't use them. Think about it. We can't sit there and take comatose, brain dead women. We can't impregnate them. We can't turn them into little baby factories. We can't exploit them in that way. We can't sit there and use them as wet nurses and disgusting things like that. So we can't do these things. Why? Because we've determined that it's bad. We can't exploit children. Or it's wrong. We already said it's wrong. Child labor. It's wrong, right? Uh, so gone are the factories, the sweatshops and all that kind of stuff. Little children doing things, at least in the free world. Go to different parts of the world, totally different circumstance. So already we are like a few minutes in, 42 seconds. Is that right? We're 42 seconds in. Then already we've got problems. Okay, let's maybe we can move on. All right. Well, I was stuck. I was stuck at the first premise. So it's either true or it's not true. If it's not true, then there's no reason to have an argument. Okay. If you believe it is true, then whatever makes it true for you would technically be the trait, because theoretically, philosophically, prescriptively, if a human didn't have that particular trait or set of traits that gives them moral value, then step two, there's no trait absent in animals, which, if absent in humans, would cause us to deem ourselves valueless. Now, this is another declarative statement. This is supposed to be another truism. So this is one of those things where it has to be either true or false. Okay? Because when it says there is no trait absent in animals, um, that means the total sum of possible traits. Meaning that you could sit there and name traits, an infinite amount of traits, and according to the second premise, the second claim, uh, you're not going to find one. Not one single trait that, should it be absent in animals, if it were absent in it, if that same trait, if it was absent in humans, would cause us to deem ourselves values. Now, this is included to all the animals. Why do I say all animals? Because once again, there's no qualifiers for this. It just says animals. Just same thing it says right there. It just says humans. Now, there's a reason why these are extremely vague. Okay. And I've heard him try to reword this argument in order to kind of put people into a Kobayashi Maru, no-win scenario, where they're unable to give an answer because they can't reach an answer. Okay, because it's kind of taking, what he'll do is he'll sit there and say, now he'll reword it. He'll say, okay, he'll say take out animals and replace it with sentient beings. Here's a problem. That changes the parameters. Okay. Um, because if you sit there and change animals to sentient beings, that kind of fucks the argument too, because technically humans are obviously sentient beings. Because according to Isaac and several vegans, there is no morally relevant trait. There's no morally relevant difference. That's what the second claim is. It's basically saying there's nothing difference between you and an animal on any kind of moral level. So if there is no difference, then if he switches it up and says sentient beings, that fucks it all up because humans are also sentient beings. Okay, so that would just make it sound weird. It would be like sentient beings are moral value. There is no trait absent in sentient beings, which, if absent in sentient beings, would cause us to deem ourselves valueless. There has to be a qualifier, right? So it has to separate it. It has to say animals and humans. I mean, you can put there's no trait non-human animals, uh, which is fine. But as soon as you try to switch it over to sentient beings, you change things. You sit there and say there's no trait in absolutely sentient animals. Again, you changed it by saying sentient animals. Okay, that would negate that. Basically, you're shunning all of the animals that are non-sentient, because there are obviously animals that are non-sentient. There are animals that can become non-sentient. Um, so then you have a problem with that, because then if you're just sitting there pigeonholing it, you're trying to, you know, trying to uh, avoid an actual answering of a trait. You know, by doing that, that's just intellectually dishonest. Uh, and let's see now, there is no trait absent in animals which is absent in humans who causes deeper self values. Absolutely, there is. Technically, sentience. If I believe humans have moral value because they're sentient, and I believe that any non-sentient human is devoid of value, then if there are if there are animals that are non-sentient that exist, um, and there are uh, non-sentient humans that exist, then technically the second claim is also false. Remember, these can only be true or false. There's no logic. Remember, this is a logic test, so it's either true or false, yes or no. That's it. There's no maybe. There's no technical nuance in this argument right here. In this one, because of these declarative statements, these are not nuanced. Okay. Now, how he presents them, whenever he actually when he employs this, he what he does is he kind of takes he adds what others have called a secret or an invisible or premise. Okay, and he ends up using this in a verbal sense because it's not written here, obviously. Okay, so you name a trait, right? Say intelligence. Okay, then he asks, you know, would it be? Uh, is it moral to kill retards? You know, this is if you say intelligence. He phrases it just like that. Basically, is it immoral uh, to kill other humans? If you say, well, yeah, of course, because here's the thing. That brings us back to the first thing. Humans are moral value. Any answer you give would somehow be would it wouldn't work. You know. Now, if you say that If a person is if they're devoid of intelligence, um, or they have less intelligence, and if you sit there and say that yes, they are now valueless, they're consistent, and then of course you're supposed to be a monster. Ooh. Um, you know, at that point, does it really matter? But now here's the thing: if you say all humans are moral value, then you're technically going to have a hard time with every trait you use because you already think that there's no trait that another human being can have that would deem them valueless regardless. Um, that's the gotcha, you know. Now, if you have the mindset of most vegans, you can sit there and you can say sentience. Is it immoral to kill a non-sentient human? Is it okay to exploit a less sentient human? I don't know. Well, I mean, no, with the not, it's not good. It's not kosher. You don't kill humans. You don't murder humans. You do not, and that's. I'll get to there. I'll get to there. He'll talk about murder and all these kind of things, words that he. Anyway, okay, and of course, it goes into C conclusion. Therefore, without establishing the absence, without establishing the absence of such a trait in animals, we contradict ourselves by deeming animals valueless. Now, I've had vegans sit there and say you cannot prove a negative. You know, this would be asking us to prove a negative. It's saying that there's proof of a negative, but that's whatever. I'll let that slide. Whatever. Therefore, without establishing the absence of, without, yeah, see, without establishing a negative, uh, without establishing the absence of such trait, animals, we contradict ourselves by deeming our animals valueless. Once again, by saying that humans are moral value because they are sentient. And if I sit there and say as a whole, right? Now, then the second, then they're by claiming, and if I say that's say if that's true, say if that right there is true, humans have moral value. Humans are a moral value. Same thing. Humans have moral value, and then dot 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 because uh, they are, and I can sit there and say they are normally sentient. You know, they're generally sentient. Kudos, because that leaves off a caveat. That means that hey, all those that have sentience, you know, they're on the positive side of moral value, and the ones that don't, negative, and that's reiterated in the second one. There is no trait absent in animals. Now, if you see there, you've already found one. There are plenty of animals that do not have sentience. You know, it doesn't matter. They are lower life forms. Uh, everything from the little was it the water bear? Water bear is an animal. It's one of the smallest animals we've got on the planet. They survive everywhere. If you believe they're sentient, you got problems. Okay, but they're an animal. They count. It's microbes, things like that. Like I said, generally it's lower life forms. However, there is such a thing as birth defects as well. So you count naturally non-sentient animals, any animals that are through birth defect, through accident. Um, yeah, So that means that we found a trait that is absent, that can be absent uh, within animals, that if absent in humans, would cause them would cause humans to be deemed valueless, or at least some. That's another thing. It doesn't, again, there's no quantity to this. It doesn't say would cause some of us to deem ourselves valueless. But when they say when he says ourselves, he kind of, and he does this whenever he asks the question. You got another one. He'll sometimes phrase the intelligence one. Say, if you're not, if you have the intelligence of, you know, usually what he does is if you sit there and say species, he'll sit there and say, okay, well, uh, if a super high advanced space monster kind of alien that are super smart, super sentient, they come down and they're more sentient than you, uh, is it okay for them to kill you? Would you accept that death? Would you accept the reasoning? And basically, it's a here's the golden rule: apply it to yourself. The do unto others as you would have them do unto you, or uh, what's the other one? I don't remember how it goes. Anyway, it's a basic form of the golden rule. So he questions it. If this happened to you, would it be if this trait were removed from you, would it be okay to kill you? 9 times out of 10, because you're supposed to view yourself in the same boat as the animal. If you sit there and say, uh, if any of them, if you say no, I want to live, or no, it's not a justification to kill me, or no, I don't accept the justification. Here's the thing with saying that you don't accept the justification is not the same as you object to the justification. You know, uh, no one accepts dying. For God's sakes, in any given situation where it comes down to you are going to be killed, no one is going to accept that. So you are objecting to it. You can object to it. Objecting to it doesn't necessarily mean you are um, denying the alien or the bear or whatever their morality. It's not even about you anymore. You know, if you sit there and say I object to myself dying, is not the same as I do not accept their justification. You can sit there and say, sure, I accept that they feel that way, but I thoroughly object to them trying to do it. It's different. Um, and I've seen Isaac put people in those scenarios. The alien is usually the one that he goes to because, you know, everybody's seen an alien movie. We all, you know, from alien enslavement to taking over the world, you're gonna die if you know, if you're whatever. Are you supposed to just roll over and take it? That's not the same um, as accepting their the moral quandary that the alien is the justification by the alien. One, that doesn't guarantee that the alien can communicate. If you can't communicate, then it doesn't matter. You don't know why they're doing it, and that's the whole thing. It requires the alien scenario. Fucking can't stand it. It requires you to know what is in the mind of the alien, and he tells you this is their reasoning. So you're supposed to ignore the fact that you now know this information. which means that you're supposed to ignore that you're somehow able to communicate with that alien. And if you're able to communicate with the alien, then you can reason with the alien. Okay? If you can reason with the alien, then that means that you can kind of come to a maybe an agreement or find out that they don't give a fuck, and then you just defend yourself to the death. No animal, not a single animal on this planet, generally um, accepts their own murder, their own death, their own slaughter. They don't roll over and just take it. Generally, unless there's understanding that you're gonna die, and there's nothing you can do about it. But that takes a level of intelligence that humans generally have. Some animals kind of do. They kind of resign to the fact that they're going to die or that they're going to be killed. Um, they may not fully understand it, but they understand. They get that they've got no out. But if an animal could reason with us, that's the whole thing. You can sit there and if an animal can reason with human beings, um, would it would it still be okay to kill them? Well, no. If you could reason with them, they could you could figure out, you know, what the hell is going on, but you still say, okay, no, I'm gonna kill you. That might be different. But we're not exactly having deep discussions with animals trying to justify our actions to them. And they're not exactly objecting, are they? I'm sorry, they're not accepting our justifications. They're objecting to bodily injury. That's instinctual. It's not the same. I mean, with human beings, it's instinctual as well. Um, we can dress it up however we want, but that's, fight or flight. You know, one or two. It's visceral. With the aliens, we could give two shits what they're. It's the same thing. If and say for instance, we cannot communicate with them. You say if we got to the whole point where these guys are so advanced that communicating with us would be no different than communicating with, for us communicating with an ant, you know, or an aphid, a carpet beetle, you know. There's no communication there. So if you have that same level of sentience, say they're so far advanced, they're so far up on the totem pole that they aren't communicating with us, then in all honesty, there's no real difference than if they were any other force that we can't communicate with. If they were like, if they were a bear, you sit there and substitute bear for for a super intelligent alien, and it's the same scenario. Bear wants to kill you. There's no reasoning with the bear. What do? Hey, you either run like a motherfucker or you pray to God you've got a gun. There's no difference there. So it's not a matter of, there's no moral question in that. It's purely visceral. It's purely, absolutely biological. There's no philosophical debate you're going to have with a bear or with a storm or with a super intelligent, so far advanced that you're nothing but a speck of dirt compared to them intellectually and uh, sentience. Although I don't understand, that's the whole thing. What does super sentience have any? What does that do? What does sentience do? In all honesty, You know, I looked it up. You know, sentience is, um, it's the ability to feel and uh, sense the world around you, which is different than intelligence. Or sorry, let me look it up one more time. Actually, couldn't think of it. Mhm. Okay, there it is right here. A sentient quality or state. Okay. Okay. So now, of course, this is different than a vegan a vegan definition. Sentience is a sentient quality or state, a feeling or sensation, as distinguished from perception and thought. So that's so that you can't use how you perceive your environment. That's just it's different. It's different. And you can sit there and look up sensation. Basically, it means the response to the five senses, or if you have like the heebie-jeebies, that kind of stuff. You've had a sense of things. Feeling again, feeling could be from you know an emotional level, whatnot, to all the way down to one of the five senses. But you notice it is different from perception and thought, which means how you perceive. And anytime you hear it go, well, it's about your subjective perception. If this, that, other thing doesn't have or does have a subjective perception, sorry, perspective. If they say it's how you perceive the world, then that's not true. Anyway, let's go look at sentient. All right, sentient. Do. Responsive to or conscious of sense impressions. Finely sensitive in perception feeling. But would you like definitions? Of course, conscious of sense impressions. Now, what are sense impressions? Like, ooh, aware. Aware is excuse me. Having a strong realization, perception, knowledge. Uh, okay, watchful awareness. All right, so now once you delve into it, then you get to the showing that now you're aware. So what they're really saying is they're equating uh, sentience with awareness, having a showing realization, perception, knowledge, or at least the realization and perception. Being aware, and then they go into, well, what it really means is uh, well-being, having the ability to experience well-being. Excuse me. Okay, having the capability of experiencing or having the capability of well-being, being able to whatever. I had to look up well-being. I mean, I kind of know what it meant, but I want to see what they meant by it, or at least what they want to go by it. But well-meaning just means to be comfortable, healthy, or happy. So if you're um, comfortable, um, oh, I'm still trying myself. If you're comfortable, healthy, and happy, then you have well-being, and sentience is the capability of being comfortable, healthy, and happy. Okay, is there an opposite to that? Whatever. Uh, so far as I can tell. Now, if human beings, oh, sorry, not humans. I'm going off on a tangent. Okay, let's see if we can get past 42 seconds. No, okay. He wants it. Uh, he wants it that way. You can sit there and say, um, you can put anything else you want to it, but he wants it to mean that. Okay. At this point, he brings up the level of moral value. What he means is this. Now, if moral value is on a hierarchy, we're at the top, at least as far as we know, as far as we can determine. And some creature is at the very bottom. We're at 100, they're at 1, and there's 98 in between us. What's the consequence of having less moral value? Is there a consequence? Maybe he'll go into it. He probably will. Okay, so we don't have to present, we shouldn't have to present any kind of argument. Um, Basically, we've came to our own conclusions. We don't have to give a reason why we believe this. Okay. Um, Technically, this argument is not bootstrapping. Right here, if you bootstrap this, that does not mean that this giant thing right here is bootstrapping. As far as I know. Let's find out. Okay, bootstrap. Um, to get oneself or something into or out of a situation using existing resources. Okay. Maybe there's something better to say. Bootstrapping ethics. Ethics of bootstrapping. What? Okay. All right. Like in my head, you can sit there and I sort of get what he's talking about. Um, but, but okay, I'd have to look like really get in depth on that one. Whatever. What does that even mean? It does. You're gonna sit there and repeat this. Does produce a contradiction. It doesn't. Oh wow. He says it. How does it do both? How does something? What? Okay. How about be? Okay. Oh, okay. I get it now. He's saying that if you use intelligence for animals, but don't use it in humans, then you know, I think it produces some kind of contradictions. Okay. Oh, good. What I think is going to do that. Qualifies as a normal human being. Okay. Normal human being believes that all humans should have. Where do you go from there? I want to hear the actual contradictions. If he says does not, if you say does not, then that okay. Okay. Now he's already stated that you're supposed to find a trait where you reject you about it, or where you can't. Okay. So you're saying the trait is an intent. A lot of people get confused about that. They, whenever they get into the name of the trait, they want to find traits that animals don't have that people do. That's not the way to approach it. Because you'd have to find a trait that both humans and animals have that coincides with what you uh, the trait has to coincide with uh, what your grant how you go about granting moral value, right? That's a trick. If the trait is absent in animals and also absent in humans, and we don't kill the person, then that would be a contradiction. Okay. So you're not looking for something that animals don't have that we have. You're looking for something that both humans and animals don't have. And if both humans and animals don't have a certain trait, but we kill the animal and we don't kill the person, then that's where the contradiction comes into play. Here's the thing: there are things that both animals and humans don't have. Um, let's see now. Let's pick one. Now, here's the thing: it doesn't matter if people, these people who don't have, it doesn't have to exist. The trait technically doesn't have to exist. There's nowhere in here where the trait says it has to exist. It just says it has to be absent. It doesn't mean it has to be there in the first place. You know, I could sit there and say, all right, cool. Uh, it's okay to kill animals that have uh, I was gonna say, oh, yeah, so they say it's okay to kill animals that don't have skin. Would it be okay to kill humans that don't have skin? Yeah, but here's the thing: there aren't many animals that don't have skin. I don't think there's any animals that don't have skin. They all have an outer coating. You can sit there and say it's okay to kill animals uh, that don't have that are not carbon based. They're absent carbon in their molecular makeup. If you didn't have carbon in your molecular makeup, would it be consistent to kill you? Yeah, okay, fine. I mean, it's okay to kill a computer. Is it okay to kill if an animal had the intelligence of a computer? Obviously, you can't do that because they have sentience. See, that's the unifier for vegans is the fact that it has sentience. Okay, what if it does not have sentience? Is it okay to kill that animal? If the answer is yes, then it would be okay. It would, and you ask the same question: would it be okay to kill a human if they didn't have sentience? If the answer is yes, look at that. You found a consistent trait, and there you go. That premise is again not correct. It's now false. It's ridiculously easy that way. Sit there and you can use full moral status. If a human is devoid, if full moral status is absent in animals, is it okay to kill them? Obviously, it is because they don't. We do. Um, is it okay to kill a human that is devoid full moral status? Here's the thing: I've already said this. We grant full moral status. We believe it's inherent within every human. It's an intrinsic value. It is a trait. So Can we take it away? Technically, yes. It's a no, but yes. Um, we can through um, other means kind of label another human being as not being another human being. Typically, this is if that person violates the life of another human being. We execute murderers. If somebody murders someone, there's no moral dilemma in killing them. It's not murdering them. You're killing them. You're ending their life, and there is no moral implication involved because they gave up that part. That once you violated the lives of another human, you've killed another human being. You are no longer considered human, and you give up that full moral status. So, because you're now an animal. How many times are murderers described as animals? Are they literal animals? No, but we can sure as fuck kill them without even batting an eye. But for everybody else, it's a trait. It's intrinsic. It's respected by everybody else. Even though we have people that don't have it, or sorry, that aren't aware of it. We respect that full moral status because we we've decided, we believe that that grants that's a basic human right. That's what grants basic human rights is the havings of full moral status. It's not based on sentience. It's not based on skin color. It's not based on anything other than it's not really. It's based on the fact that to do otherwise could incite atrocities. We used to experiment on the mentally ill. We used to experiment on the mentally impaired. We used to have slaves. Why don't we have slaves anymore? That's a bad thing, by the way. We shouldn't. Slavery is an abomination. It wasn't because the moral dilemma didn't exist because because they were sentient creatures. No, the moral dilemma was the fact that that's another human being, and you don't do that to another human being. We said it's wrong. If I was a religious person, I can sit there and say, "Well, God said it's wrong. God believes it's wrong. My religion believes it's wrong. Blah blah blah." It doesn't matter, but I'm not. But intrinsically, in our we our gut feelings, we go, it's wrong to do that to a person, to another human being. That's wrong. You know, and even if you sit there and use the golden rule, or if you use empathy, the whole thing, you reverse it back to yourself. Would you want to be a slave? Believe it or not, some people would say yes, because it would be uh, contextual. You know, there were plenty of people who were slaves because they chose to be a slave. It was either be a slave or die. You know, it doesn't seem like much of a choice, but it's still nonetheless a choice. You know, you can choose to die. Death is an option. So yes, there are people that chose to be slaves. Now, if it was their choice, is it then unethical? That right there is a debate all in itself that I'm not going into. I'm not even going to touch it. Other than say, some people actively chose to, if it was between dying and living, or living and dying, whatever, if you had a choice between saving your child and being a slave, or your child is murdered and then you're a slave, or you're tortured, or whatever, what do you do? You choose servitude over anything else. You sacrifice in that manner. There you go. That seems pretty easy right there. Anyway, but all in all, we view slavery as abhorrent, not because that person's sentient, but for the fact that they are a fellow human being. So what we say, hey, everybody has full moral status, which means we have full moral consideration, which means that we all have basic human rights. Now, what those rights are, what the what are the basic rights? What is it? What does it all mean? Those can vary from century to century, from country to country, from religion to religion, to society to society. These can vary in some ways, but I know with the vegans, the core principle is you have a right not to be killed, and you have a right not to be exploited. Bad part is exploitation is kind of it's vague, or as uh, Canadian moral fags, I say, it's vague. Fuck, it's vague, dude. Vague, vague with an A. Not a ugh. It's vug. It's a vug. Um, but we we accept exploitation. Humans accept some form of exploitation. You go to your job. You work 8 hours a day. You get paid a certain wage. You have, in essence, you have said, hey, yeah, sure, I will work for this much. I'm not going to get more. It's a form of exploitation. Your work gives them profits. We do this. There's nothing wrong with it. So if there's nothing wrong with some exploitation, then you sit there and you can't say that all exploitation is wrong. So if not, if in humans some exploitation is allowed, then uh, other than animals should, by all rights, intents, and purposes, uh, it should be okay to exploit them as well. Now, what are the forms of exploitation when it comes to animals? Particularly the ones that come to mind, and one of the reasons why vegans are even vegans is the dairy and, of course, the egg industry, because technically that's a form of exploitation. Well, they consider it a form of exploitation. Um, the animals, I mean, if the animals treated right, then is it really exploitation? I mean, uh, if again, if you were in a situation where you were paid good, but you know that your labor is profiting someone else, they are kind of exploiting the fact that you are, say, I don't know, uh, you're slightly undereducated, so you know they're going to exploit your manual labor. You know, if you're uh, highly intelligent, they're going to exploit uh, your skills. They're going to make money off of you. You know, that's a form of exploitation. The U.S. government, it's technically extortion, but give us money, or we put you in jail, and then get our money anyway. You can qualify that as kind of, taxes could be considered exploitation. So we agree upon this. So that means that that in some ways, that those forms of exploitations, those voluntary, whatever, uh, that is in and of itself not bad. Now, for animals, it could be construed as involuntary. You can't exactly sit down with a cow and negotiate. You know, they can't shake their heads or they can't tell you that, yeah, sure, take the milk, it's good. And they can't do that. That's fine. But and I noticed in the debate between Ask Yourself and JF, uh, and it was brilliant. I love it. Basically, JF was um, kind of saying, "Hey, it's not the chicken. We're not exploiting the chickens for their eggs. We're not exploiting them for their meat. It's the other way around. They're exploiting us. The animal is using us uh, as an evolutionary stepping stone. We're the go around. We ensure that their species continues existing." Yeah, in a way, if you want to really look at it that way, sure. Then that anybody who's ever had cats, whoever's whoever lives with cats knows, or dogs even for that matter, who has pets or animal companion or whatever you want to call them. Fuck you, vegans. They're called pets. Anyway, you are. They're exploiting you. They're using you. What do? You feed them. You water them. You play with them. You take them outside. You entertain them. For God's sakes, how many cat videos? You know, cats are famous. How? Well, they got a person to be a cameraman, and then they did their little tricks. They got on the internet, and now they're famous. You know, having a pet can be an incredibly uneven exchange. You know, in some cases, whatever. It's not a working relationship, so it means that their survival depends on you. Um, well, it could. I mean, they could just as easily leave. Well, not really, but whatever. Anyway, when you're uh, waiting on these animals hand and foot, you know, cleaning their shit, it's not different than children. It really isn't. If you really want to look at it, it's not much different than having kids. And I'd love to find the person that's going to sit there and say that the children are not exploiting their parents. Of course they are. That's their very nature. They have to. Anyway, okay. Oh, let's keep going, shall we? Oh, point me to the to the non-human to the non-human member of the Homo sapien species, or point me to the human in any other species living today. Now I understand that yes, there were other species of humans, but they're gone. Right now we're talking now. So if you can point me to that, you know, then oh, that's a good one. And it kind of follows through with the intelligence as well. He likes to sit there and put forth the little quandary. Um, if your mind was transported into the body of another animal, making you basically not human, would you of course find it okay to kill you? Now here's the problem with that. It's basically saying that everything about you is the same. Everything internally, what you think, how you think, what makes you you, you know, your consciousness, what makes you you is transported to another animal. Okay. What if that didn't happen? What if you were 100% transmogrified into that animal 100%? Brain and everything. Would you have a problem with someone killing you? Probably not. So you can sit there and put, oh, and that goes on intelligence. Intelligence. If you were reduced in intelligence to that of a cow, would you effectively uh, object, or would you not accept being killed? Okay, here's the thing: if you have the intelligence of, say, cow, have no ability to 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 articulate, to even understand the concept of being murdered. Not really. Not on an intellectual level. Not on. You wouldn't morally object because you have no concept of morals. So if you don't have the concept of morals, can you morally object to being murdered? No. So, oh, look at that. Killed two of them. Obviously, it does. So, fuck you. There's a difference between reciprocation and respect. We as human beings respect the moral value of, or sorry, the moral status of other humans, even if those other humans can't respect us in the same regards. Again, babies, retarded. We respect them. You are functional. Everybody's functional. I don't understand what science has anything to do with this. Okay. Okay. Now, when he says morality, what he really means is empathy. So that was kind of a lie. If you mean empathy, Isaac, you should just say empathy. Nutritiousness. Okay. Some of those were retarded. So if anybody's ever used them, I unfortunately understand the frustration. No, 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 no. That, sir, was an assertion. That, sir, was an assumption. Sorry, assumption. Um, what if my worldview still doesn't lead me there? Let's hear that one more time. There we go. What about emotional connections? And what if you do? What if you do accept the argument per se? What then? Because um, a lot of this contends on the you not uh, you know you not agreeing to it. What if you do? Huh. Okay. So once again, if all right, so humans are moral value. Great, no caveats, right? Good deal. There is no trait absent in animals, which, if absent in humans, would cause us to deem ourselves valueless. Um, so if I name a trait, that makes this incorrect, right? If I establish uh, the absence of such a trait, right? So if I do this, if I say sentience, because sentient, because remember, it's just any trait. You can ask any, you can plug any trait in it as long as it's consistent. Then kudos. So if sentience is absent in the animal, it is valueless. If sentience is absent in humans, um, we are valueless. If it's absent, would it apply to me? I suppose. Why not? If I didn't have sentience, I would have no ability uh, to consider myself of value. I could say the same thing about a certain level of intelligence. If the animal is absent intelligence, are they values? Yes. If a human um, is absent a certain level of intelligence, would that person deem themselves valueless? Yes, because they would have a concept. They would no longer. Uh, they wouldn't have value. They wouldn't perceive. They wouldn't perceive value because it's no longer. It's no longer the concept is no longer understood. Now, that's a certain level. Obviously, that is an extreme level for humans. Sentience, again, if you don't have it, you can't object to dying. You can't object to killing. You can't. You have no way to object against the moral justification. If you have no way, there's no debate. Right? Now, here's the problem with that formula. Because it says there is no trait, meaning there is no trait. So if you have a trait that is um, that makes that statement untrue, meaning you take away the no, you said there is a trait absent. Say there is, that makes that statement, the original statement, untrue. So if it's false, bang, done. And that also means that if that's true, then that means the first one is also the humans are more valuable. You've already proven both of those are now false. Uh, are no longer, well, at least some. There is nowhere in here, because they are, in most of the cases, he asks from personal perspective, not from, everybody else, but from you. You believe that if this happened to you, if you were absent this trait, would it be okay to kill you? If you say yes, then that is logically consistent. You go to your conclusion, where it says, therefore, without establishing the absence of such trait in animals, we contradict ourselves by deeming animals values. That is now false, because there is no contradiction. It says right there, therefore, without establishing the absence of such a trait. If we establish a trait, we establish uh, the existence of an absence. That makes sense. So it changes to, therefore, establishing the absence of a trait in animals. We do not contradict ourselves by deeming animals values. Remember, this is off and on. This is either yes or no. It's either true or false. You can't say, well, no, because the verbiage is of an absolutist nature. These are direct. These are not, there's no caveats, there's no qualifiers. There's no, well, this, there's no extra fluff. So it's either yes or no, off or on, right or wrong. And look, if you can establish a trait that is, in fact, um, what you would consider, um, I know I'm repeating myself. It's fucking 1:00, 1:30 in the morning. I'm getting a little there. So let's keep going, because I'm going in circles. Now we're gonna see what happens once we've somehow graduated from part A. Let's go to part B. Let's see what happens. Let's see how he gets veganism from here. Technically, this does not. There's no mode of treatment. Here's that scale again. What is the consequence for being lower, of having less moral value? Because he's not saying that he's not saying this. He's not saying um, that animals and humans are equal. In fact, most vegans will sit there and say, no, 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 animals and humans are not equal. Oh, good. Then what's the morally relevant trait? What's the difference? What's the morally relevant difference? What puts human beings here, and whatever poor lowly little creatures down at the bottom? What is the um, yeah, what determines this? Hmm? And by the way, kudos for anybody who watches this afterwards and gets to this point. I may sum it up later on. It's another argument I've had with vegans. What? What puts human beings at the top? If you say sentience, how do you quantify that? By what metric? Is there a way to measure sentience? If you say it's that there is, what is the metric? Because whatever that is, whatever you're using to measure sentience, that would technically be what would be granting moral value, not sentience per se. And then here's the whole thing is again, if there is a hierarchy, what is the consequence? What are the ramifications? Why are we up here? And since we're here, what happens to everybody else? Do they get a little murder? You know, do they get a little exploitation? Let's find out. We don't murder animals. We kill them. We slaughter them. We could even say we destroy them. We don't murder them. Stop being a Stretch Armstrong. You're clearly reaching. Now, I've seen you do this. That's a semantics game. You say murder because if you say murder, then that equates that animal to a human being in some morally relevant way. And if animals are the same enough to be murdered, the same as humans, then this right here is somehow true. And if this is true, then what is the morally significant? What is the significantly relevant? God damn it! Oh yeah, what's this? The significantly relevant difference. Name the trait. Name the difference. Name the difference between me, an orangutan, a pig, a dog, an ant. We all have moral value. Why do I get more than an ant? Why am I? Why? And if I have more, what are the benefits? Pig. I don't know why chickens aren't in here somewhere, but say chicken's right here. What is the consequence of being lower than a human in terms of moral value? How did you determine this? Who gets above who? If you sit there and say it's about more sentience, gravy, how are you determining that? If I sit there and if this was a different graph and it was about intelligence of people, you know where that argument went. I'm not gonna. No, it's not about that. Just any random people. Okay, you got Bob, you got Susan, you got Bob, you got Susan, you got Jeremy, you got Doug, and you got Anthony. Anthony is dumb as a box of rocks, and or Steve or whoever the hell fire at the top. He's the smartest motherfucker in the group. How do we get those? How do we measure that? Oh, we have an ability to do that. IQ tests, things like the cognitive tests. There's ways of testing that. We have tests for this. How do you test for sentience? Is there a test for sentience? And if there is a test for sentience, how do you deploy it with animals? And have they? Or is it just assumed? And if it's an assumption, then that means it could be wrong. And if it's wrong, why the fuck are you putting this up? That means it is nothing but your opinion. If it's your opinion, then it doesn't mean shit. This right here is an opinion, kids. This right here is an opinion. Sit there and pass off opinions as something. It's not anything. Your opinion. You can prove it in some way. You know, you're claiming this is not a. This is, oh, by the way, this is not prescriptive. This is not prescriptive. This whole thing could technically be prescriptive, but this is descriptive. This is you making, well, technically, you're making statements. You're not saying it should. It doesn't say. It says would, but notice it doesn't say should cause humans to deem themselves values. Notice it doesn't say should. He says it out loud in prescriptive to create a prescriptive argument. Shoulds, the oughts. It is ought dichotomy. What is as opposed to what ought to be. Based off of his opinion, the opinions of other vegans on some. So I want to find out. Okay, you already said murder, killing animals is not murder. Killing humans is murder. That's why we call it murder, to distinguish the difference between killing a human and killing an animal intentionally. Typically, there's no malice involved when you're killing an animal for food, because you're killing it for food. You're killing it for pleasure. Not like, oh, it's a sport, but oh, it's I get off on doing it kind of thing. That is a different animal altogether. I would agree and say that maybe that is murder, to torture and then kill an animal just for the sheer ecstasy that it brings you, or some shit, some sicko crap. Okay, then maybe, but it's also a clear indication on the mindset of that person. That means they're in danger. They're a danger to other humans, and not all the time, but usually most serial killers start out killing animals. A lot are. Anyway, enslavement. My favorite. That's not my favorite. Okay, kids. Animal sanctuaries. Like the vegan kind, you know what I'm talking about. The sanctuary farms. Those would technically be enslavement. That's an animal in captivity. So obviously, vegans have no problem with that. Remember that if it's not kosher for a non-vegan, and even though we're treating the animal well, it's still considered enslavement, right? That's they said doesn't matter how nice the farm is, right? So what if the animal's killed, that's not exploiting it, it's killing it. So same thing. Would it be okay to? And it's the same counter argument. Would it be okay to sit there and take the mentally retarded, um, or the less than addict, less intelligent human beings, and stick them on a farm where you couldn't go anywhere? Would that be okay? Even though you're not killing them, you're just protecting them from everything else. Would then be okay for them to breed unchecked? Hmm? You can't really interfere with their reproductive processes, right? I mean, that's violating their body autonomy, right? So you can't castrate the males. Uh, you can't spay and can't neuter. That would be against. It would be a violation of their reproductive rights. So you can't do that. What happens? Oh, you there? And then what do? You're using the animals to get money. You're exploiting people's sympathy. You're using the animals. I mean, for God's sakes, have you seen the ASPCA commercials? You really think that they're not? I mean, they know what they're doing. I mean, granted, yeah, for the most part, they're doing what they're doing, but they're still using those animals um, to make money. Even if they show a smidgen, a tiny little spark of profit, if they give it all to, if they use every dime of it and none of it goes towards any kind of profit, then technically it's just you're you're using people's sympathy. Oh, don't worry, my girl's definitely a vehement, vehement. She donates to the SPCA. We have every animal we have is a rescue, uh, except for the birds. Birds are not rescues. They just keep the cats entertained. Oh, sorry. Artificially inseminating another animal is not rape. No, sorry, artificially inseminating an animal is not rape. No, no, that doesn't. This is not. It doesn't actually specify a treatment. It says anything short of non-exploitation. Okay. Killing an animal is not exploiting it. If you're saying it's morally identical, so if it's not morally identical, what is the the what's the difference? Name the trade, Isaac. None of those have anything to do with animals. Voting is not a matter of morality. What does that have? You come off this uh, from morals. It's not immoral to deny well, okay, whatever. I mean, it. Hold on. I just want to see something. Yeah, retarded. Whatever. Oh, I'm gonna just say right now. I almost forgot to mention this. His fucking argument is just a repackaging of uh, the argument from marginal cases. And a marginal case is um, any human. They call them marginal case humans. These are people who, uh, again, like the babies and mentally challenged, uh, and all that kind of stuff. These are, I think, those are the two go tos. By the way, those are marginal humans. They're partial. Well, there's something about them is defective in some way or another that is reflective of uh, to sit there and show that, well, we give these humans the right to life. Why do we give them the right to life? Why do we give them moral value? In using Isaac's terms, we give it to them, right? It's taken for granted that they have it. So why do we do this for these outliers, these this tiny little portion of humanity that if we sit there and if there was an animal uh, analog that we kill the animal and not the person. This is one of the things that he hasn't he admitted here, and he rarely. I he'll sort of half-ass admit that it is his whole argument is based off of a version of the AMC, but he usually sits there and denies that it is. It says his is different. His is somehow different. I read it. It's not different. It really isn't. The only difference is the second portion where he leads to veganism thing. Uh, the AMC is basically his first the first portion of his argument, and it's not the same in the same way. He tries to create that no win scenario. Uh, you know. Anyway, because they're not a moral issue. That's the trick. There, where are the other things that are that would more or less into the sphere as it pertains to this argument? What you're about to say does not. Voting, they shouldn't. Animals shouldn't drive cars. You know, what does it have to do with morality? They don't deserve the right to drive. How is that a moral quandary? as you sat there and said before, not being able to conceptualize something is not irrelevant, is irrelevant. There are many places that still allow every registered voter to vote, regardless of intelligence. There's no test for this. So technically, your example is insufficient, therefore irrelevant. Retards? You're gonna say retards again? Just saying. And irrelevant. Voting rights and religion. That's what he's got. Okay. No, I mean he, you know, kind of tame compared to the rape, murder, and enslavement, right? If you're determined that some humans don't deserve them because of XYZ, um, and it's almost purely cognitive, uh, then okay, but you're not wording it that way, are you? I can almost sit there and just clip that out. On a moral level, denial of rights is not wrong. That's not from a pragmatic. That's from, uh, well, I'm sorry. He didn't say should. By the way, vegans can't stand gray areas. They don't like 50 Shades of Grey. So if I say they should or shouldn't, does that change anything? Consequently, if you can, but you're gonna call us mean things, aren't you? See, you got to be insane. Vegans deny moral value to non-sentient humans. Okay, Okay, I understand when he says objective morality, what he means is uh, something that's like a tangible, like it exists in the physical world. What? Wait. What? No, you can't sit there and go, okay, one more time. No, no, your argument doesn't state that. You are stating it. Notice he doesn't say subjective morality. Oh, if I sit there and look at the definition for contradiction, and if he sits there and makes a different statement, then that means his interpretation is inaccurate. Something is contradictory if you find it contradictory. Did he really say that? That's what I thought he said. Does any of this make sense? It's not. I don't give a shit. What does this have to do with anything? It just what that you like moral fagging, and this is your way of doing that. For you, to you, because you whatever. No, they really won't. I had a debate with this guy. I'm not even kidding. I'm not even kidding. This dude right here, he's about to sit there and his little shit. I actually had debate. It's on my fucking my Instagram and uh my DMs. Um, and I did this, you know, the whole. It was a decent argument. He lost. Didn't want to admit he lost. Didn't see that he lost. Anyway, it was the rest of it's just bullshit. Is it? Yeah, it's just bullshit. Oh, Nate Trey. Somebody likes me. Okay, kids. Yeah, done with that. Once again, he never really said what moral. Why is it relevant? Everybody has the moral value. What justifies the difference? The fuck? Should plants be involved? If you believe that all life is equal, if you believe all life is equal, if you believe every single living creature on this planet is equal, and you're a vegan still, you're an idiot. You're just a moron. Because if you are vehemently against killing all life, you would be dead because you didn't kill anything. Now, I have a kind of an interesting little moral quandary for you. It's a little thought experiment. Okay, you've heard the dog and the child in the burning house. Most people will choose the child because the child has a much greater ability to have sentience, right? They're able to live longer. They're able to experience more well-being and to understand more well-being. Okay, let's try some things. If you were in a room that's on fire, you can only save one of two things: either Hitler or Black Mamba. You can only save one, and you can't let both die. Who do you choose? Why? Now we're talking Hitler, 40-year-old Hitler, 45-year-old Hitler, mass murderer, or he implemented I'm pretty sure he killed a shit ton of people all by himself. Genocide maniac motherfucker. You know he did this shit. You know he's an evil motherfucker. You are locked in a room. It's burning down. You can only save one or the other. Who do you choose? Black Mamba? One of the deadliest snakes, one of the most aggressive, venomous snakes on the planet. No, this animal could kill you flat out. All right? Hitler, the person. I know. I don't believe it either. Hitler's a person. He's a human being. Human beings are on the top rung. They get full immunity, right? Supposed to, from murder. Because they have moral value. They have moral, he has the ability uh, to experience sentience, to experience well-being far greater than a black mamba. Less intelligent, less sentient, deadly. Fuck-tarded motherfucker. Deadly. What do you choose? Oh, and you can't kill yourself. I mean, technically, you could try to get the snake without it hurting you. The chances may not be that great. It may kill you. It's an innocent animal, an innocent creature. It didn't do nothing. It's a pretty snake. Fucking Hitler. Pretty snake. It's going to kill you, or could kill you. Genocidal maniac. By being logic, you can't choose this guy. Can't give him higher moral value. You can't treat him better than this retard. Because this retard has more sentience, therefore more valuable. So, genocidal maniac, killer snake. You can put your answers in the comment section because I'm pretty much done for the night. If you stayed with me this long, kudos for you. I apologize for how long it was. I apologize for the fact that I had to redo it. Um, if you like it, give it a thumbs up. You can catch me on Twitter. Other than that, this is Bearded Devil signing off.